This video is brought to you by Captivating History. At its peak, in around 117 CE, the Roman Empire had spread across Europe, North Africa, and Asia with approximately 50 to 90 million people under their rule. They expanded their culture and lifestyle so efficiently that even today we use the proverb, "All roads lead to Rome." It is unfathomable that one city was able to expand their influence as far as they did. But what was life like at the center of this vast empire, in Rome itself? According to legend, Rome was founded by Romulus and Remus, twin sons of the god Mars. Left to drown in the river Tiber by their evil great-uncle, they were rescued by a wolf and a woodpecker. They grew up and took revenge on their great-uncle by killing him, before deciding to build a new city. The twins could not agree on where to construct the town or who was favored by the gods, so they started construction in different places. When Romulus began building the walls to his city, Remus jumped over them, as this was said to bring bad luck to the fortifications. Incensed, Romulus killed him. He then consolidated his power and named the city after himself. During the centuries that followed, Rome was ruled by a succession of kings. The last king of Rome was Tarquin the Proud, who was driven out in 509 BCE by the people of Rome. After this, Rome became a republic and was ruled by a group of senators. During its peak, Rome itself had potentially 1 million citizens. The number of inhabitants meant that Rome, as well as being awe-inspiring and magnificent, was also very dirty and dangerous. Many citizens lived in rectangular apartment buildings called insula, meaning island. There was no running water or sanitation in most of the insulae, so they were often smelly and unclean. And as women gave birth at home, this was not ideal. The apartment blocks could be up to 5 stories tall and were built so close together that it was said you could shake hands with someone living in a neighboring building through the windows. This created a labyrinth of narrow alleyways that citizens had to navigate. These alleyways were dangerous in many ways. During the day, you could be drenched by someone emptying a chamber pot or killed by a falling roof tile. By night, the narrow streets were stalked by thugs and thieves. Unlike modern apartments, the top floor was the least desirable, as it was often darker and more cramped than the lower floors. Life on the top floor was dangerous, as the insulae were notoriously unsafe, usually falling down or going up in flames. A collection of letters written by Roman politician Marcus Tullius Cicero to his friend Titus Pomponius Atticus during 68 to 44 BCE mentioned these issues. Cicero writes, "2 of my buildings have fallen down, and the rest have large cracks. Not only the tenants, but even the mice have moved out." Fires often occurred due to the wooden frames, floorboards, and roofs, coupled with the fact that the Romans did not have ovens, but cooked over braziers filled with hot coals. Even if your apartment building was not the one that caught fire, you were still not safe. Roman firefighters would tear down adjacent buildings to stop the fire from spreading. Because this was such a common issue, the Romans were the first to utilize fire insurance. From the poet Martial's Epigrams, published between 86 and 103 CE, we learn that insurance fraud is as old as insurance itself. You purchased a house, Tongolianus, for 200,000 sesterces, and a calamity but too frequent in this city destroyed it. Contributions poured into the amount of 1,000,000 sesterces. May you not, I ask, be suspected of having set fire to your own house, Tongolianus? Romans usually used chamber pots when at home, but communal toilets were common. These public lavatories were often the preferred place to go, as they had pipes full of running water that flushed the waste away. If the thought of pooping in front of your partner grosses you out, imagine doing it in a room full of strangers who were also going about their bathroom business. Worse still, to wipe, the Romans did not use paper, but a communal sponge on a stick. These sticks were far from hygienic and contributed to the spread of disease. In addition to these public toilets, large chamber pots were placed strategically throughout the city to limit the number of men urinating in the street. The local laundry workers emptied these chamber pots, and the urine was collected and used to clean clothes. The urine would be diluted with water, and workers would tread on the clothes to wash them, then rinse them with water. This may seem disgusting, but as urine contains ammonia, it did clean the clothes, keeping the Roman signature togas nice and white. However, togas weren't worn as often as tunics, as they were far more comfortable. Initially, the citizens of Rome rarely wore pants, as they were associated with people such as the Gauls and the Persians. Therefore, the Romans saw them as barbaric. Although these conditions were squalid, the working day for the average Roman was relatively reasonable. Waking at dawn, the Roman worker would make their way to work, perhaps grabbing a fast food breakfast from a thermopylaeum en route. They would work until the afternoon, then spend the rest of the day at their leisure, possibly heading to a local bar or public bath. Roman bars had a large service counter that opened out onto the street that offered a takeaway service, and an indoor area for those who wanted to dine in. These bars provided food and warm wine sweetened with honey, which was a particular favorite at the time. The Roman baths were part of the luxurious lifestyle for which the Romans were famous. An epitaph of the tombstone of a 52-year-old Roman citizen called Tiberius Claudius Secundus reads, "Bathing, wine, sex ruin our bodies, but bathing, wine, and love make life worth living." The baths were a place for people to meet, wash, and perhaps pick up a prostitute. Some were extremely large, like the baths of Caracalla in the northeast of the ancient city. Located near a working-class area, they covered an area of around 27 acres and could accommodate 1,600 bathers. As well as the baths, with their two 19-foot-long fountains, it had a library, a gymnasium, probably a brothel, and a restaurant. Lavishly decorated with mosaics and marble statues, it was a place to escape the small dark rooms of the insulae. The baths were open to the rich and poor alike, with the poor exfoliating by rubbing their bare skin against the stone walls, and wealthy patrons bringing with them an entourage of slaves to look after their clothes, scrape their skin, and slather them with olive oil. Slavery was an integral part of Roman society and an essential part of the economy. Slaves owned by the state constructed public buildings, and privately owned slaves worked in whatever capacities their owners wished, including farming crops. The majority of slaves were people who had been captured in the wars and invasions Rome was constantly undertaking. The life of a slave in Rome was often brutal, with slaves being forced into prostitution, sold to gladiator schools, beaten, abused, and killed by their masters. If a slave owner died, then his slaves would be tortured and questioned about the death. Should a slave be found guilty of killing the master, all the slaves belonging to the deceased would be put to death. Oftentimes, slaves would be crucified. Despite all this, there was hope for the slaves in the ancient city of Rome. During some Roman festivals, slaves were allowed to join in the fun. One such festival, Saturnalia, which occurred on December 17th, had a tradition of owners waiting on their slaves and giving them gifts. Slaves would dine and revel with their masters with relative impunity. There were also a few ways for slaves to become free Roman citizens. They could earn their freedom or be granted manumission. Life in ancient Rome depended on your status, much as it does today. There was no police force, and vigilante justice was all you had to rely on if a loved one was robbed or killed. Of course, there were laws in place that favored the wealthy. There was a court system, but just as in our current era, the person who could afford the best lawyer could usually win the case. There were also two classes of punishment. Regular citizens, called humiliores, would be condemned to work to their death in the mines. In contrast, the powerful honestiores would be sentenced to far more lenient punishments, as it was felt that they contributed more to society. Crucifixion was by far the worst penalty, and it was usually reserved for severe crimes and those who were not citizens of Rome. You would be given a very unusual death sentence if you were found guilty of killing a family member. Having your feet and arms bound, you were put in a leather sack along with a dog, a rooster, a monkey, and/or a snake, then thrown into the sea. Although given the practicalities of this method of execution, it was probably used as a deterrent rather than a punishment. With the Roman Empire expanding over such a vast amount of the known world, Rome imported a wide array of goods. The residents of Rome had access to a selection of services and commodities not found anywhere else in the world at the time. Goods were branded by their makers, and standardized weights and measures were used. A baker found selling an underweight loaf of bread could be punished by law. Bread was a staple of the Roman diet, and one of the things that attracted people to life as a citizen of Rome was the 35 to 40 kilos of grains that every citizen received per month. This stipend meant that even the poorest were able to keep themselves fed regardless of their situation. Every month, you would receive your grain from a local distribution center to use however you wished. Usually, it would be taken to a miller for them to grind into flour. But if you couldn't afford that, the grains would be boiled and eaten as porridge. Most people did not have personal ovens, so they would have to take their flour to a baker to be made into bread. Given that the supply was flour and the demand was bread, a decent baker could stand to make a lot of money. An ex-slave called Ulysses built himself a lavish tomb with the vast sums of money he made during his years as a successful baker. Life in ancient Rome was remarkably similar to life in a large modern city, with people from all levels of society mingling in the streets, bars, and baths. Romans had a penchant for the finer things in life and were often viewed as being overly decadent and debauched. But in truth, the Romans paved the way for much of modern-day life, had the same joys, and suffered from the same issues that plague many city dwellers today. After the Roman Empire fell, many of its conquered lands rejected the Roman way of life with its luxuries and social infrastructure. However, Rome would have a lasting effect on Western society that can still be felt today. To learn more about ancient Rome, check out our book, Ancient Rome, A Captivating Introduction to the Roman Republic, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free mythology bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.